More and more young adults are living at home with their parents. We're talking about adults between the ages of 18 and 35, and this is some 25 million Americans, according to this new survey. That's roughly 1/3 of young adults in that age group. Now, that number has increased steadily since the early 2000s. Experts say the shift started with the Great Recession. That's when the housing market crashed and new construction slowed dramatically. We also saw another spike during the pandemic, and that number has not exactly recovered. In fact, it's only gotten worse according to this latest research. At the same time, the latest housing supply research shows the U.S. is short some 4 million homes. That limited supply is driving up prices and putting first-time home ownership out of reach for many. According to the National Association of Realtors, the market share for first-time buyers plunged to its lowest level since they began keeping records in 1981. First-time buyers now make up just 21% of all home sales. Typically, they're at about 40% of the market share. And that has some economists concerned because buying a home is one of the primary ways that families build equity and long-term wealth. Parents helping their kids buy a house is also becoming the norm in America.
Oops, my mic was muted. Sorry about that, y'all. There's a lot going on. And what I want to say to that is if you are even slightly aware, there's inflation going on in all industries. And the housing market is just another industry by which prices are just hiking, like spiking, and I mean high and higher. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for adults to go back and live with their parents. I mean, if my parents live nearby, I wouldn't mind staying there for, 6 months to a year, just to kind of either make life easier on them or save money on my end or just cut excess, spending or, maybe stay there for some time just to make it an investment. But either way, things are really pricey, not just for single people like myself, but also for two working adults who are married and living together. Things are very expensive for them. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot of moving pieces that I think can speak to why these things are happening. But if we just stick to the bread and butter of the conversation, houses are really expensive. A first-time homeowner can be spending almost $400,000 to $500,000 on their first home. That's unheard of. And in some markets, the first home you buy could cost you $1 million as a first-time homeowner. And it's not to say that you're just living outside of your budget, but just the cost of living in these certain pockets are so expensive that the first home that you can buy is priced at $1 million. And I think if we're being honest, there is some consumerism that goes into this, like when you become an adult, like you're pushed to go get your own place, go get everything on your own, when that's not necessarily the best way for everyone. I'd even say for most people, I think you should stay home as long as possible, save, and to me, I would consider it almost like on-the-job training as an adult. Like you get to grow more as an adult with a safety net. Nothing wrong with that at all. And you get to save more money. You get to help build your home. Like you can, and what I mean by that, you can help around the house. You can help with bills, but it, of course, it'd be less expensive because you don't have to pay an additional renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. You don't have to pay an additional renter's cost or mortgage, especially with reasonable parents. But I also know that part of living at home has a lot to do with peace. So if you and your parents don't necessarily get along, that's a whole other issue. And that's why I think certain times, in certain situations, kids are pushed out a bit sooner because there are things that they want to do and their parents, and when I even say reasonable things, like my dad was strict. So if I thought I was going to be able to stay at home as an adult and not have to do all the things that he say do, then I had another thing coming. He wasn't going to allow me to stay at home and develop as a man and make decisions and critically think for myself. He was going to think for me and tell me what to do. So it was best that I leave. And also, I was going to college. I was following my older brother. So I left home. That was the best thing for me to do. But if I could have stayed home, my parents ended up moving anyways from my hometown. But if I could have stayed home and went to school and saved money, learned lessons as an adult male in my parents' safety net, that would have been great. That would have been great. But that wasn't the case. And that's not the case, unfortunately. That's not the case for, several, for several reasons. Parents are getting divorces, homes are traumatic and lack peace and chaotic. So, as when you're becoming an adult, you want to get away from that. Instability in the home. So now you're actually doing all the things at home that you'd be doing if you lived on your own. So you might as well just go out and live on your own, because you're not really saving anything. You're not building your life as an adult. So I understand it. It's, for various reasons, it's challenging for certain people to stay home. But if you do have the opportunity to stay home and build your life and be of assistance to your parents, and in that safety net, I say do it.
74% of parents with kids at home are either considering or have already helped their kids buy a house.
Oh, wow.
More than half of parents say that buying a house is just as important to them as helping to pay for college. And to give you an idea of how quickly things have increased, here in Tampa, our median home price is now at about $440,000. That's
what I said, around like $400,000, $500,000.
Roughly 30% over just 5 years ago.
Wow.
For Fox 13, Kelly Cowan reporting.
Yeah, things are expensive, and you have to, just keep that in mind. If moving home isn't an option, maybe getting a roommate. And we've been spoiled so much here in the States, having a roommate. I don't want a roommate. God knows I don't, because I have things I'm particular about. But if my roommate is particular like me, then it's no problem. And especially if we have the space, I'm not making an excuse to live on my own, but I am saying it's probably best that I live on my own until I'm married, because just having a roommate or living with someone, it wouldn't be peaceful. I like a minimalistic approach to living. So I don't like having a whole bunch of stuff in the cabinets. I only need a few seasonings, because what it does is it clutters my brain, and I start to feel like claustrophobic, like there's just stuff everywhere. And when it's that way for me, I don't feel peaceful. I don't feel at home. I don't feel rested. I feel really anxious. So that's just one of the challenges. And I've been this way since I was a kid. This isn't something I've just taken on because I watched a bunch of stuff on YouTube. No, this is something that I experienced. I was a child, and I was always trying to declutter things. I would get up at 2, 3 in the morning and clean the house, wipe the walls, sweep the floor, and mop. Me and my sister used to do it. She used to join me sometimes, but I've always been this way. But sticking to the meat and potatoes of the conversation. Living at home isn't a bad thing. If you can, do it. If you can't, we got to make it happen, outside of the home. That's just what it comes down to. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Connect with the brand online at www.there'shopebrand.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video.